Yo, what's up, everybody? This is JH, and welcome to the Chop It Up show. Today, I have a guest here that I'm pretty excited about having. She is pretty dynamic, interesting, and has kind of paved her way as being someone with original thought. And she's been able to kind of build off of that. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, but personally, I'm looking forward to this because she and I have known each other for some years now, but haven't had the chance really to like dig in and talk. And we feel like we know each other, and we do. So I want, we're going to dive into all kinds of stuff. So why don't you give the audience a sense of who you are and what you do?
Okay. My name is Alex Wolf, and I am an entrepreneur, author, and artist. And I focus on media ecology and specifically internet ecology, which is the study of how the internet creates environments which affect our behavior socially.
Okay. Yeah, and if you guys follow her on the gram, which our audiences overlap, so I'm sure like some people have context, but you'll see that she's posting kind of interesting rants all the time that I want to go back and forth on. But you started. Can you just, because I genuinely don't know, walk me through like your roots? Where are you from, and how was your upbringing?
Yeah. So I grew up in New York, in Brooklyn, and my father is in tech, has always been in tech. And what?
No, I'm just listening. Okay. Did I have a funny face?
Yeah. Have a dad who, was into tech and had computers in the house. So I've been on the internet since forever. And so in my early 20s, I started a company primarily through Instagram. I leveraged Instagram to create a brand and online community that went viral and was luckily successful. Yeah. And
I remember, was that Boss Babe?
Yes.
I remember those days.
Yeah.
That was before I knew you.
Right.
Or I think I might have seen you coming and going, but like there was whispers like, yo, that's the Boss Babe girl.
Oh God.
And you used to wear the shirt all the time.
Yeah.
And I just knew that like my sense of you then was that, you had jumped into a space early and like were intentional about building or what have you. So how long did you do that for?
Yeah, so I ran the company for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and then I operationalized it for a while, and then eventually sold it as of this year, beginning of this year.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah. And so since then, I have published a book called Resonate, and it's for anyone who wants to build an audience. And it sort of goes into why I think Boss Babe went viral and just sort of the strategy behind leveraging social media in a different way than I think is normally taught. And so since then, I've just been promoting the book, and I speak and
and you've been doing a good job. You've been covering a lot of ground, and I really like the kind of content that you're posting these days. I pay attention.
Yeah.
You're posting a lot of these audiograms, which I think works really well for your style because you're very cerebral and like, it seems like you have a love for the written word. So that helps you thrive, that space.
Yes.
But so Resonate, that is something that you know how to do.
Right.
Because I don't go through a lot of motherfucking stories, but when I'm on yours, like I'll have something to say about it in my head, one way or the other.
Yeah.
Right. So is that what the whole thing is about? Like learning how to evoke emotion?
Yeah. So I think what you're talking about is, you've probably had experience with my content or whoever's content that you care about, that when you have a involuntary physiological response to content, so whether it's like laughter or just like, it can be like just impulsively saying like, wow, or chills or whatever, tears even, what's happening is you're resonating literally, and your body sort of programs itself to be like, that person has something important to say. Let's save what that person has to say. Let's follow that person.
Right.
And so that is what I feel is a super sound approach when it comes to how to contribute to the loud, noisy climate of the internet.
Right.
Because I think a lot of people make content just for content's sake, and they're not thinking about how to make people stop the scroll instead of just contributing to it.
Okay, so I like that, and I've had some thought around this as well, because I feel like I resonate. I feel like I know how to do that, have nurtured that, have worked at it in part. But one thing that I have come to like observe for myself, and I'd love if you disagree, we can go back and forth, but it almost feels like I can spy when someone's trying to resonate and has nothing to say.
Right.
And like that can't be learned. Like you need to have a point of view.
Right.
And lean into that.
Absolutely.
And, you know, so are you showing people who don't know how to resonate, or are you getting them to think about it a little different?
I think that's an interesting question. So in the book, I go into what I think the 4 sort of like components to resonating content must have. And it starts, you know, it does take a level of, first of all, you know, you have to have the personality type to be willing to put yourself out there. Because I think what's happening, unfortunately, is a lot of people in our generation want to make a personal brand because they feel like that's the right thing to do. And they don't necessarily have the personality type to make it happen. That's
facts.
And but the people who are, you know, selling you courses on how to do it, or, you know, they're not going to be the ones to tell you that because, you know,
they're making money off it.
Right. So it's first acknowledging that, and then it's going from there and saying, okay, well, what are the components that make a piece of content resonate? And it usually has a lot to do with the amount of passion you have. Like, you're not going to resonate with someone unless you yourself are resonating with what you're talking about, because it needs to matter to you. You know, they say like you can't be interesting unless you're interested in things. And so yeah, I think I agree that there are a lot of people who are not interested in things, and we can feel it, and it's packaged well.
Exactly.
And
that's the trick, though, because when it's packaged well enough, you can have a good enough guise like that it'll fool some people.
Yeah.
And then they
but not for long.
Well, I don't know. I've seen it persist for long enough, but long term, you don't get the W. Like, you don't get the legacy.
Right.
But it is, especially with Instagram, because it's so visual.
Right.
All you need to do is throw up the fly cars, have drone shots of a crib that you rented, you know, like all kinds of shit.
But see, again, I don't think that's going to last long. And then 2, I feel like that appeals to a certain psychographic that is going to mature out of that.
That's fair.
And that's why I think it doesn't last long, because eventually we end up realizing like money isn't the answer to everything.
Right.
And that there are bigger questions to be asked and bigger goals to be pursued than just the superficial stuff.
So what are in your mind some of those bigger questions that we should be asking right now?
Well, I think generationally we are maturing, and we are starting to realize that I think right now we're dealing with this really ugly elephant in the room about our social media addictions, and how social media is making our relationships unmanageable, all types of relationships, professional, romantic, and friendships. And we don't really know what to do, because we're all just on here, and we all need it for economical reasons or political reasons or whatever. It's just like, it's like, you know, a great analogy I try to use is when the car was made, you know, they had to start building roads, and it changed the whole infrastructure of the country. And you couldn't just be like, well, just don't have a car. Cars kill people. You know what I mean? It's like, it's too late. We've already invested and created a whole structure for this car.
Okay.
And so that's where we are with the internet.
Okay, that's an interesting analogy. So, but how do you make of this, right? Because I see you know, you got the blue check next to your name, right? You got the blue check.
Yeah.
You're on there a lot.
Self-admitted.
Me, like, right, like that's the thing that makes your position kind of cool in the market, from my view.
Right.
Like, there are people who like downplay it,
but
then they don't.
I hate that.
They don't acknowledge that they're on there a fucking lot.
Right.
Right. So you're self-admitting like, hey, this is what it is.
Right.
So how do you? This is just a personal question. Like, how do you manage within you the reality that you're spending a lot of your time thinking about, I guess, the negatives of social, but you're on social a lot, and you use it as a tool to get your message out, which is clearly resonating.
Right.
So it's like paradoxical. It's kind of interesting.
I think it's paradoxical, and I think it's super meta. Are you asking how I find peace with that, or?
That could be a way, but it's like, I guess you're aware that you're using the same thing that you're saying we should be careful of to get the message out there, to be careful about it.
The logic behind that is that my audience is on there. Like, who am I talking to? I'm talking to people who are addicted to social media. So if it's just like any business where it's like, well, where can we target our customers, or where are they?
Right.
That's where they are.
Well, do you want to get them unaddicted?
No. That's not my goal. My goal is awareness, because I'm afraid with moral standpoints. I'm afraid of being the person that's like, all right, guys, here's what we're gonna do. We're just gonna all give up and throw our iPhones in the garbage, because I think that's so irresponsible and intellectually unsophisticated. That's not a solution. I'm not here for that. I'm more here because I think we don't even have the awareness to the degree in which this addiction, and it's not even just the addiction, it's just the simple fact that it exists.
Right.
Social media exists with or without the addiction, what it means that it exists and what it's doing.
It's, talking with you is genuinely getting me to assess my own usage of this space, because it's, for as much as I'm on social and like use it and whatever, and I feel like I use it in an intentional way, I haven't even spent time really assessing my own relationship with social.
Right.
So if I can for a moment, like, I guess where I'm at with it is, people are there. Like you said, the roads have been built, right? Like the infrastructure is set, the behavior is set. And if it's not social, it's going to be something else. Like before this, it was TV and then radio, whatever. So like, I am where people are.
Right.
And because I feel that I have a point of view that people resonate with, that's worth bringing out to a broader audience. Yes. And like, I use it in that way.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a responsible usage?
I think so. I think I don't want to make that call. Like, again, I try to be very careful about judgment. I really try to have an observational standpoint, because you know the answer to that question more than I do. And I think everyone else will know, because again, the second I say this is better, then it sets up it makes it liable for just more hypocrisy. So like the people who are going on and saying social is bad and everyone should get off, but are still addicted, like they have to deal with that shame at 3:00 in the morning. I don't have to deal with that, because I'm open about how I feel about it.
That's true.
It's a genuine addiction. It's like it would be like any other substance abuse, right? So you're not gonna like, tell an alcoholic like, well, just have a little bit. You know what I mean? And that's how we treat the situation.
Got you.
So
okay, well. So then all that considered, like, you're doing a lot of talks right now, and podcasts and all kinds of stuff. I mean, you have the book out. So I'm, again, just personally curious, like, what is your personal roadmap? Like, where do you see this going? And, I'll leave it there and then I'll chime in afterwards. Where do you see this all going for you?
Honestly, I'm very happy with where I am right now. Meaning, like, if this is just what I end up doing for like as long as I can see, then I'll be happy. And I think the only reason why I can say that is I've spent so much time not doing what I want to do and not, feeling fulfilled. And I feel like I'm finally at a point where this just really like excites me. And because it excites me, I'm not like, I don't have this like rigid 5-year plan, because I'm like, this is just really good. If we can just keep this going, I'm good.
That's real.
Yeah.
That's real. I mean, and I didn't mean that question to come off as though like what you're doing currently is not worthy, but it's like, like yesterday I had in here a cat he's a freestyle soccer player, but he also like does music and he also like does comedy. And so I asked him to reflect on like where he's optimizing for. And he like confided that he just doesn't know. Yeah. Because he doesn't know within his own mind like where he'll end up. Yeah. So I was curious on that front, because I've been touching on this a lot recently, but our generation, right? Like I want to break down the landscape right now, because I feel like our generation, the generation that came before us, the ones who rose to the top, like in each respective field, like Hove and Nas on music and Gary Vee on social and whatever, like. We've come up in a place in time where we've had them to look up to. Right. But I feel like the critical mistake, I think it's a mistake. Yeah. That people our age are having is like to the point of like idolizing. It's almost like people are paying too much attention to other people's roadmaps.
Right.
And when I get asked, when I do like interview or whatever, like people say, yo, who do you look up to?
Right.
I honestly have a hard time coming up with that answer.
Right.
Because the answer that I want to say and that I guess I'm going to start saying is like, I look up to who I'm going to be in 20 years.
Right.
Like I'm leaning so into my roadmap, and also I'm making it a point to build with my peers. Like you, I consider my peer.
Right.
You know, we're in, our audiences overlap and we're in similar spaces. We're different enough, but like we're peers. We're going to be around in 20 years, and we get to look back and be like, yeah, you remember that time when we did the Chop It Up show, whatever. In fact, we can actually flash back to this if we ever want to pull. That's why I love doing this, because you can like, you can flash back to moments. But like, that's what I'm falling in love with these days. I'm falling in love with like, how can I do this shit in my own way?
Right.
Because, you know, people in your space, they weren't your age now in this era. So like, it's completely uncharted for you.
You have to take the context of the time you're in into consideration. And I do agree that people are like, well, this is the way Hove did it. And it's like, well, Hove didn't have internet. Let's start there.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's not to discredit his path by any means, but I do think we do ourselves a disservice when we think that we can just take those people's steps in today's climate and think it's going to have the same effect. And I talk about that with like, I don't know if you've seen me talk about like my Issa Cardi theory, but what's so beneficial about Issa and Cardi, because you know, like the whole Black Girl Magic, everyone looks up to Oprah and Michelle Obama, and they're great.
True.
But they came into the game in a completely different climate, right? But Issa and Cardi came into the game using social media and with the internet.
That's
so
true.
Their pathway into the quote unquote industry, I think, is a more viable pathway and relevant to how today's creator is going to get into the space. And I'm sure in 10 years it'll be different again. Right. You know?
It's going to flip all over again.
Right.
But with that about footprints, like, do you do any peering into like what, you know, like what elements do you want in your career, just out of curiosity, right? Like, is it like you want a multi-book deal, or you know?
Well, if it comes, great. I think what matters to me, I think if I were to pin a goal down, is to be taken seriously into consideration when conversations like this are had, because I don't come from an academic background, and I feel like the other people who are talking about these topics are not in our circle, and they're usually in academic circles, and they're usually older and male and look nothing like me. So, and that's fine.
Oh, white guys, it's okay. You can call them out.
It's totally fine, because if anything, I get excited that there are other human beings that exist that care about this. The only issue is, and I guess again, my goal is that, okay, Alex Wolf has a say in this conversation too. Like, she contributes to this.
That's real. And in this moment, I just realized that we're kind of fighting the same battle on different planes, because like in investing, also when I go into these rooms, it's really these old white motherfuckers with generations of money and often generations of privilege. And I think the mistake that people make is to, especially in today's political climate, is to assume that those people are ill-intended. Right. You know, more often than not, there's no like blatant like ill intention or malintention. It's like just the things that exist because the majority of people distributing capital look and come from a certain way.
Would never know I exist. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
There's no path in which our worlds will collide other than the fact that we talk about the same thing. Right. So, you know, there are parts of me that get frustrated about it, but then there are parts of me that are like, well, the advantage that people like you and I have is that we get to have these conversations with people that they would never be able to talk to because they're in those circles. We also have the advantage of understanding in which medium to communicate it with, because a lot of those guys are writing like, you know, scientific papers and journals that no one that follows me is going to read, that, you know, that even I probably wouldn't be able to like stomach through, just because they do have too much of they're just not the appropriate medium in which to give this information out. So I try to focus on the advantages, but I think still when it comes to like goals, that would be a great goal. In this moment, your lane became perfectly clear to me, and you explained it that way. Like, I understand, that resonated. Good. That resonated with me, because I just feel like we're fighting a lot of the same battles. So, okay, with that, man, that's powerful.
because there's no one that's doing it. Now, one thing that strikes me about you as well is you have a business savvy. It's not something that you talk about really,
right?
Like, but when you opened up, you said, I'm an entrepreneur, that came first.
That's because I'm on this podcast, but yeah. Well, because I know entrepreneurs are listening, and that's the context I'm giving, so people know it's not just author artist. Yeah.
Hyper aware. Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So in your own channels, like, you don't talk about it much. In fact, I almost feel like you might even play it down how direct and explicit you are in naming that business savvy that you have. And I'm not sure if it's because you feel like that jeopardizes like the authenticity of your mission or whatever, but I've noticed that about you that I don't feel a lot of other people have in your space.
Right.
Meaning, like, you're aware it's not just about for you to win, which you, in my like definition of it, you're winning,
right?
Because you're winning people's hearts over and you're winning the audience over. Like, for you to do that, it's not just about the message,
right?
You're also being hyper aware and nuanced in the delivery of it, in the way that, you know, you're approaching how to build social and all this stuff. So I just wanted to bring that up, because I'm not sure if you have, like, what are your thoughts to that when I say you have a business savvy? Does that come from Boss Babe, or do you feel that's deeper rooted?
I think, yeah, a lot of it comes from my experience in running a company. And I think that, you know, I feel like I still do talk about business, but it's usually like I'll have my critical feedback on certain things. Like, you know, I remember you commented on the rant I did about Toys R Us. Like certain business news will pop off, and I'll be like, I'll just feel like I have to share why I think this or didn't work or did work. But more than business specifically, I think the vertical of branding in business is where I would say my expertise lies, because, you know, first of all, it's the more, you know, creative sort of artistic part of the business.
Sure.
But that doesn't give it the appropriate respect I think it needs, because branding is so important, specifically in today's economy, more than I think it's ever been before.
I agree.
Because there's just so much of the same stuff that the only way I think you can differentiate your product, if you're literally not inventing or innovating something, like, the only way you're going to differentiate is through brand, you know?
You're a Steve Jobs fangirl.
Yes, I am.
I am a Steve Jobs. Like, that's my dude.
Yeah.
Like, and I often think a lot about, like, damn, this motherfucker changed the world. Like,
so wait, I have a question for you.
Okay, shoot.
Do you think that he would be happy with the iPhone right now?
I think the easier thing to do is to say, oh, he'd be turning over in his grave, like, whatever, yeah. Because, you know, I think about that question actually from time to time. Maybe we all do, who like know and appreciate Jobs. But what he did was, like, every time he launched a product, he had this like leapfrog ability, you know, and he would change industry after industry. But I wonder if mobile was the last time that it could change it that fast. Like, he brought something to the game that you couldn't disrupt mobile in the way it's set up to be disrupt now.
Right.
Like, you couldn't disrupt it meaningfully without it getting to critical mass. Right. So, like, we needed an infrastructure of everyone having, like, I remember when they came out, it was a novelty, and, like, I still had a, you know, flip and whatever.
Right.
And then
it took a while.
It took a while. It took the carriers adopting and all this other stuff. And then once it became mainstream, then we had to get the 4G LTE rollout, which bandwidth really affects how, you know, then Uber,
and not only that,
Lyft.
But yeah, it was the marketplace. It was the app marketplace that took it to another level.
And then, you know what I'm saying, now then socials. Like that.
Well, that's what I mean though. Yeah. Like, anything in the app market, because basically it became, now it's just a pretty screen to look at,
right.
An advertisement business model. That's really what it is. And I think about it a lot. I know it's the easy answer that he wouldn't be that pleased, but I just feel like it was so hard to tell. What I think is interesting about what you said though is that you feel like there isn't the same capacity to leapfrog. You think out of mobile specifically?
I think that there's a lot of space now to disrupt, but I don't think you could have meaningfully disrupted mobile like 5 years ago, because it was still bubbling to the point of critical mass. And now that we're there and like everyone's on it all the time, which is why, you know, you even have a viewpoint on it, because it's gotten to that point. now I think it's kind of set up, and I don't know, what it'll be next. And if Jobs were around, he probably would know.
Well, I think he would disrupt it. I think he would disrupt the iPhone like that.
I mean,
he disrupted the iPod.
He did. He disrupted his own business.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Well, I mean, that's what innovation is about. Like, especially in tech.
Yeah, I mean,
if you don't do it, someone else will. And look at Zuckerberg. He understands that.
I like your take on business. I see, like, you ranted on Toys R Us. You ranted on a few players, and it's always, like, something that legitimately gets me to go, that's fresh. Like,
that's good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And, so I appreciate that. Now, what do you feel, like, what is personally exciting you around, like, I don't know, what's next? It doesn't have to be, like, the space of the medium, but, like, what's exciting you right now?
Snapchat.
That's right. You've been talking about that. All right, give us some sound bites on it. So, and you said, I caught up on your story today, or yesterday, and you said, hey, it's not so much like the difference in the companies as much as it is a difference in behaviors.
Right. So business philosophy and product ethics is what I'm going to be comparing.
Why are you bullish on Snap?
I don't know if I would say I'm bullish on Snap, the company, as much as I'd say I'm bullish on the philosophy and product ethics behind Snap. And there's a difference because how they operate as a company depends on who they hire and how they delegate those powers.
Right.
The internet behaviors and the approach they have to the market and to the consumer, I think are extremely viable and something that if they don't use is going to be effective to someone else who uses it. So I'll give you a few examples of why I think that they are appealing and interesting to me. So let's see, we can start with the fact that there's two different types of behaviors that are on Snapchat and Facebook, obviously, right? And so Snapchat's approach is private and ephemeral. So, and then Facebook's approach is permanent and public. Facebook launched in 2004 for a desktop website. This is like a few years shy from the 90s. We're talking about a completely different time, right? We were just talking about the climate.
Yep.
And it was for a clunky website. And they eventually integrated for the iPhone and then became the thing on there. Snapchat came out in 2011 for the iPhone specifically and had a completely different approach. On Facebook, you had a public feed timeline. And this was like cool at the time. Like people actually cared to see their friends post up pictures of their food and blah, blah, blah. Like that was revolutionary. And Snapchat, and then also they archived it because it was sort of like, well, where else was the content supposed to go? Like we might as well just leave it up here. Like this is really cool. And we have this like button and people can comment. But, if you look at the skeleton of Facebook, it does look like a 90s internet form. It has avatar on the left adjacent to a text box. Like that's old internet, right? Spiegel comes into the game. Spiegel, and it still looks like that. Right. Instagram looks like that too.
That's true. Okay.
Spiegel comes into the game, and I don't know if you remember the first time you go on Snapchat, but you're like, I don't even know what to do.
No idea.
And the whole idea was that it was ephemeral because what happened is as years passed by, the content we posted on Facebook became irrelevant and stale and, unnecessary. So Snapchat was like, we don't need to keep this stuff on the internet. We're going to be on the internet for the rest of our lives. Why do we need to archive it? Right. And then it really just started as a messaging app where the messages would disappear after you sent them, which made the stakes higher.
Started sexual.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, if the message is going to disappear, human nature is going to be like, all right, I know what I'm going to send.
I see what you mean by behavior, not the business.
Exactly.
It wasn't the feature. It's just that what the feature evoked in us.
And think about how much more fun Snapchat was.
Right.
Snapchat was never a competition. Nothing was publicly visible. You couldn't see your followers, likes, comments, anything. Facebook, yes. So it was the ephemeral behavior was working so well that numbers started to trickle down at Facebook and they freaked out and they even made like a fake Snapchat app in 2014 called Poke. I don't know if you remember that.
No, I don't.
Failed miserably.
Oh, I do remember Poke. I never got on it, but I remember it just being like kind of feeling funny.
Right. And again, here you see brand working, right? Because like Facebook can't just make the app because they don't have the proper brand set up that Snapchat did. And then the big steal was in 2016 when they took the stories feature.
Right.
And then that's when we started to.
Before that, though, Zuck offered to buy 3.4.
Well, he offered to buy it twice.
He offered
before
to. Right.
Yeah.
And to which, by the way, I still remember when Zuck offered like when the news came out, Evan's quote was actually no way. He was like, are you kidding me? Which
Right.
as a 19-year-old, however old he was,
see, this is
$3.4 billion is a lot of money.
But this is where having a silver spoon is beneficial to the world. This is like the one nuanced time, because he's not incentivized by the money. You know, he comes from money.
Right,
so for him, this is really a game, and this is
Right.
the beauty of entrepreneurship, because
Right.
it's literally the market is the battlefield.
I agree.
You know, and he's like, let's go. Like he even did something funny where, like, you know how they had the geo filters?
Yep.
On the Facebook campus, the geo filter on Snap was like the ghost, like, sticking his tongue out.
Oh.
Right? Like, I love shit like that. So they were
funny.
playing dirty. But anyway, that's just the approach of the public and the private, and the permanent and the ephemeral. These two different behaviors change or influence our behavior as a generation. And unfortunately, because our generation cares so much about the quantity of views more than we care about the quality, we
Right.
all made that switch.
Right.
And so Facebook integrating stories was not because they're brilliant. That's not why it worked. It worked because we cared more about competing more than we cared about connecting.
So we were already in the environment where people compete, and like we also have that element in us of like that makes us like Snap, and now that it's on there, like there's no need to go anywhere else. So okay, few copy, like, so I love that whole thing. Agree with that whole thing. Zuck, I think, also is an underrated product person. Like, he's fucking fantastic at product.
You think so?
I think so.
Why? Tell me.
Honestly,
I gotta hear this.
like, Instagram, right? Like, Instagram has some of the best product capabilities I've seen. Like,
Why?
every
How? What?
single product that they roll out catches on, with the exception of maybe like they launched the revitalized like hashtag feature where you were going to be able to follow hashtags as a way to like boost the priority of a hashtag.
Right.
They did that a few months ago, and it hasn't caught on because people still follow people, not hashtags.
Right.
But like Instagram stories could have been a disaster, but a lot of, for me, right?
But
like,
that's not his product.
well, but that's his product. Well, I see what you're saying. Like, fine. Like,
That's
Evan
what
came
I'm
up with
saying.
it. But
They wouldn't have even survived if Snapchat didn't create that internet behavior.
right. So I guess what Zuck is a good businessman, right? Right? Because
Well,
he's spotting.
It's Microsoft and Apple all over again. It's Kodak and Polaroid all over again. You got the people who have the market share and the ability to buy out or steal the more smaller creative artsy company.
Yeah.
And so they'll do it. It won't have the same feel. It won't have the same charm.
Of course.
But they get to sort of corner the market that way. But my whole thing is, you're a businessman, you know this. It's like you follow the brain, because it's like you can have the money and the size, but if you don't have the brain power, when I say Facebook isn't an innovative company, it's because they've relied on timing and their size and their money. Spiegel and the rest of them are over there like tearing shit apart, inventing new things. I trust that brain power for the future, because when you think about Jobs' resilience, you know how many articles went out that were like, oh, that's it, Apple's done for.
Sure.
You know, even when he was still there.
This is gonna be so cool to flash back to when you're right, and you could be like, you could have all the clips, because I know you're talking about it a lot, but like you could have that clip and just flash back. Now I agree, but I honestly, you're selling Zuck short right now, like so short, man. I mean,
I didn't say anything about him. I just said that I don't see the product genius that you see. Whoever's running product at Instagram is not Zuckerberg.
So Facebook, like it's just undeniably the hub. And like when they came out, it's not like they had a ton of money. Like Facebook, Zuck specifically in the earliest days, had a vision for the product that he enforced, which was identity was number one, right? Like you needed to have a college email address, as I'm sure you know,
right,
to get on Facebook, which validated your identity. So he like fundamentally disrupted and took MySpace's lunch. So even though like Snap came out later and is maybe more relevant to now,
right,
I think Facebook got social right. And like because he was so adamant about it being your identity,
we have to determine, I hear what you're saying, but I think it depends on what the definition of right is. Because if getting social right means that you have a generation of people who are debilitated and addicted and making extreme decisions based off of your permanent public platform.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means you got it right. If getting it right means that an advertisement business model gets, you know, someone who feels like they can take over Twitter and stuff like that, because Twitter has a similar public permanent kind of platform. I don't know if that means getting it right.
Here's how I think they got it right. I think they got it right because they had a vision for the world in which they can create a more open and connected place where before now, like you're
the
connected.
Internet was an open.
Are you connected with friends from middle school on Facebook?
No,
high school?
And I don't want to be.
Well, so here's the thing. I am, because when Facebook came about, like that was what you did. You know, it was a totally different place.
Yes.
When Facebook came out, but you're there in these environments, and over time, yeah, you grow out of being in touch with these people. I see what you're saying. You're like fundamentally challenging, like, yo, why do we need all this history constantly being with us?
Right.
But what it did was it created the hub from which other little
Right.
spokes can come out of.
Yeah.
So it makes sense for Snap to come out of that because people got tired of that. It makes sense for IG, for all. Twitter is a more cerebral, witty, snippy, urban kind, you know.
Right.
So,
Well, then I just have to point out that your Alexa literally just said that. Well, I know that Paul Allen's dead, but there's just like so much going on right now. Like the Amazon software just said that the Microsoft.
Wow, that's funny. And we're talking about Facebook and Apple, and yeah, rest in peace, Paul Allen.
Yeah, facts.
But anyway, it's an interesting dialogue.
I hear what you're saying. I think it had a time and a place. But I do think it's time to start questioning how that fits in today and how much longer we want to do this.
That I fucks with.
That's all I'm saying.
See, that I fucks with, because you're acknowledging. It would be a flaw to not acknowledge like the role that it has played and plays in society.
But again, we have to give the internet some credit. The internet was a thing before Facebook. People were going to connect either way, and they were.
Anonymously, right?
No,
like MySpace, it was easy to
anonymously.
fake identity. Like you could have multiple MySpace. I did.
But that's
right?
still happening.
But in Facebook, it's really hard to sustainably and like realistically fake a page, because it's expected to be fed with life events. And so everyone, and now as a result of that, right, you, as of a number of years now, you can sign in through Facebook, and it's further, validating your identity across the digital landscape.
And that's a good thing?
I'm not saying it's a good thing.
We have to question what that means for our privacy. We have to question because,
we can debate if it's a good or a bad thing,
Right.
but it happened. And so now Facebook is your identity on the web.
Ugh, that's terrifying. I don't think that's a liberating feeling.
Well, that's true, right? I'll agree that saying that shit out loud did not make me feel liberated.
Thank you.
I'll agree with but that's just what they did.
That is what they did.
That's what they did.
We can agree to that. Yeah, facts.
Word, facts. Damn, Zucks, Alex is coming for you.
No, I'm not. Don't send him after me because it'll be over. Sign up for my email list just in case.
Yo, you're funny. I want to get you on my show. I can't talk about it too much on camera, but it would be great because there's like space for me to bring on experts in certain fields.
Right.
And I think it'd be fun for the audience. Okay, so you laid it all out there. Like, Facebook versus Snap, like that's where you stand. And I guess just to button that up, like, do you? I don't know. Are you like taking a bet that Facebook's fundamentally going to fail, and you're like putting your chips in on Snap? Or
it's not so much a bet. It's really, again, it's about awareness. So I think having this conversation gets people to start questioning, like, oh, that's right. Like, what is the significance of a like button? What is the significance of having a gallery full of beautiful photos of me on the internet?
Right.
Like, how did we get here? Because it all moves so fast. We haven't stopped for a breath since MySpace. We've just gone from platform to platform to platform. And the other thing I say is that when we got into the internet, when our generation got into it, we thought it was going to be something we grew out of. It was a hobby at the time. It was something the adults were like, yeah, so-and-so's good with the computer. We didn't grow out of it. We grew into it. And here we are, and we're just in the room now, and no one's, like, I feel like no one's asking, how did we get here? Why is this normal?
Right.
Not to say it's bad, but just like, how did normality switch so quickly?
Yo, that's fucking deep. Like, I legit have chills just listening to that, because for, you know, as astute and savvy as I consider myself, like
Right.
I haven't once even stopped to ask that question.
Right.
Like I've just been worried, like I've been focusing on like how to leverage it and like how to do all this other stuff.
Right.
But I haven't even thought about like what it's grown into
Right.
and how we've morphed with it.
Yes.
Wow. That is dope. Yo, this has been super real. Yeah, I respect and admire you because your
Thank
ability to provoke that kind of thought, and like I think you also happen to be a good messenger for the message.
Yeah.
Because you're spunky, and it like we as a delegation of people,
Right.
generationally, racially, whatever, in whatever way you're you're a delegate, we're gonna need someone who's not gonna be afraid to like stand up in her own way at all times. And like I like about the way that you've built yourself is you're not like as tied to brands, right? And that makes you very free in the market right now, because like we're seeing a lot of our peers. I play this game too a little bit more intentionally, I like to think, but you know, the reality is that corporates, you know, control flows of money, you know, have big stakes in society,
Right.
and
then you gotta
align
start shutting up
themselves
about certain things. Yeah.
they align themselves with certain players. And you know, it'll be interesting to see kind of where the chips lie, and I'm interested in building corporations of our own for the future and like investing in them. Like that's my real shit. But we got to be open with, at least this is my view on it, like until that shift, you know, is mature in its phase of us owning our own shit. Like we can own now, start up, but I feel like it's prudent to leverage corporations, like especially the ones that you align with, believe in, whatever. As much alignment as you can find it and channel those resources and pump that back into, you know, so then we can set up to like be the big dogs later.
Right.
So, you know, I see you as an independent player in the market who's just going to stand up loud and say what the fuck needs to be said.
Well, that's good. It makes me happy.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for jumping on the show. This has really been fun. Real as fuck. We're going to post this shit up. And like, by the way, this is why I love having this show, because like I do a thing for the watch the post, and I have to be like, you know, a lot more or whatever, and like with the network that I'm in production with, like I can be more myself in that space, but this is like where we come free. Kick it and do whatever we want. So thank you so much for jumping on.
Thanks for having me.
Peace.